say their name so Don can put a name to a face. So we'll start with Glenn. He already knows your name and face, but go ahead.
Ken Hayes, Glenn, Mike Doherty, Quebec.
Peggy Rock, District 2, Squid. Excuse me, Port Elizabeth. I don't know where I'm from. I'll take them both. Sue Ford, Squid.
Tony Bovee.
District 3.
Rod Forks.
Start on here.
Yeah, Ron Bell, District 1, Square.
Steve Burke, District 2.
Barbara Christensen, District 3.
Hi. And Norma Turner, District 2.
Selinda Barkhuis, District 2, Port Elizabeth.
Nola Judd, District 1, Squim.
Doug Miller, Squim.
Okay, and then, Don, if you would just be so kind as to give us a 1-minute introduction of yourself, so we'll know who.
Can someone pass the mic to him?
And then we're going to swear you in.
Turn it on.
Sworn.
Oh, well, maybe we should swear you in first, so you're
So,
an official
truth?
member first. Yes, okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and swear you in first, and then we'll share.
And raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald L. Corson,
I, Donald L. Corson,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United
in
States
the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified
that I am legally qualified
to assume the office of
to assume the office of
Charter Review Commissioner, District 3,
Charter Review Commissioner, District 3.
that I will support the Constitution
I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and the state of Washington,
and the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of this office
discharge the duties of this office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Okay, there's a little place for you to sign right there.
Am I done?
So, Don, now that you're an official member of the charter, if you would give us just a minute or so introduction of yourself.
Sure. Don Corson. I've lived here since 1990 when I came to take a position with Barrel and Ram, a wonderful timber and land company. I was vice president for planning and development with them for 19 years. And over those years, I got to know the county, fall in love with the county, and worked with many people in the county related to land use issues especially, but also other kinds of things. I have served as a district, what was it called, for redistricting for the commissioners. Thank you for that. And that went very well. That was another interesting exercise. Also a member of the Boundary Review Board. Previous to all this stuff in Clallam County, I worked in corporate real estate, also in private consulting for environmental issues, land use issues, comprehensive land use plan issues. I also currently have a winery that I work with my wife and I and some partners, common sellers. And for those of you that are on smaller groups, we can meet at the winery. And I don't know if that'll be a fun meeting or not. But anyway, I'm very glad to serve here. The reason that I threw my hat in the ring to begin with was I thought years of experience in the county, a generally considered level head and a moderate voice.
Thank you. And next on our agenda is request for modifications of the agenda or approval agenda as written. Nola?
I'd like to propose that we request Mark Nichols address the slide from his Charter Review Commission in his pitch today. The PowerPoint presented, which reads Charter Review Freeholder Considerations, and it has 2 bullet items. Freeholders are subject to the doctrine of incompatible offices, and the second bulletin is the doctrine of incompatible offices is the common law limitation upon the right of a person to hold more than one public office at a time, and I question whether we are compliant with that.
So are you asked to do that tonight, or that we ask
If
him?
he can, and that's if he's prepared to do, otherwise he can come to our next meeting, whatever works better for him.
Before I add that to the, yes.
Can I comment since I think it's
Okay, well, I want to just ask Mark a question, then you can take comments. So Mark, I want to ask you if that's a request for you to report on that, or is your preference that you just go ahead and stick that in the agenda somewhere tonight, or that you be ready to address it next week, but I don't want to address it right now.
Very well, and then it'll be helpful for me to have a little more information, just so I can understand the magnitude of the request being made, and then learn whether it's coming from a majority of the commission. So
All right.
whenever the time comes, I'm glad to entertain the discussion.
All right. So Noah, you want us to insert that where in the agenda?
Well, I was thinking it would go where he is already on the agenda, but it sounds like he would prefer to wait and table that until next week.
Well, what we need to find out is whether or not there's consensus of the commission to address that. Ask Mark to address it. So, how about, can we do, so what is the suggestion where you want to see that question asked?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Where do you want us to see discussing your question?
I wanted to go under legal counsel report on partisan versus nonpartisan, where he was addressing us on that.
But it will be a separate item
Right.
than his presentation. So we'll insert it between the legal counsel report and the subcommittee. And it's going to be a discussion. I'm sure we all have that in our notebooks. So we'll refer to the appropriate page. Okay, any other modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
It's moved by who, Ken? Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Steve, okay. In this new configuration, be sure and let us know who's moving in a second. I can't see it quite so well. Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Next thing on agenda is public comment, and the rules are as they have been in the past. You come up to the podium, be sure you sign in, and it's a limit of 3 minutes. So, anyone who wants to make a public comment? Okay. So Ed had his hand up first, and then Jerry. And be sure when you come up, Ed, that you sign in with your address and all that stuff.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ed Bowen, P.O. Box 111, and for the new commissioner, citizen of the district. Starting out the gate there with your appointment tonight, I would advocate, if you have the time after the meeting, to hang around and chat with at least the constituents of the district. I would greatly appreciate that. And my question to the commission along with this is I'm actually, I guess more curiosity, concerned, or calling for a question on why did our commissioner resign, I'm assuming. I heard in the media she resigned for personal reasons, but of course they didn't get into that. So I don't know if the commission is privy to the reason she resigned or what, but it's mostly a curiosity, but it brings to bear kind of some transparency here too. Moving on to your other agenda items, since I believe one of our presenters is here tonight, I'm going to propose, because I've seen this at the last presentation you did, when citizens give ideas, they probably affect these presentations, and so I wanted to enter into the record tonight the idea of addressing, along with this as they're presenting tonight, the idea of, I'm just going to read it, planning for the county at large and not necessarily site-specific by the county that does not engage the public participation in the planning process within 6 months of previously engaging the public participation will not become an operating policy, ordinance, or rule. Such plans will not become a regulatory authority against said public that would stand to be negatively impacted. I bring this up, and I'm going to use the best case example as you've asked for me in the past. The stormwater management plan went to the public in 2011, just sat on the shelf until not too long ago, and then kind of got attempted to move through the process without the public's real involvement anymore. This is really outdated stuff for the public to understand, and so I would ask that to be asked during the presentation tonight. And last but not least, under your subcommittees tonight, I'm a little discussion tonight. I'm a little disgruntled about last meeting and how this moves forward tonight in regards to those public comments and testimony that was given that don't neatly fit within the matrix that you have developed. I heard this discussion last time, and I'm wondering how you're going to get to that tonight. I'm a bit just disturbed by that because a lot of public testimony has been received. It doesn't necessarily fit specifically within the matrix of a particular chapter or place. And I'm lost on where you're going with this, but it sounds like the public's voice is being lost in this. Thank you.
Jerry, you're next.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Flynn. Everybody calls me Jerry. I live at 46 Quarter Horse Lane in Squim, Washington, 98382. I've lived in Clallam County for just a little over 17 years. My qualifications are I'm a taxpayer, a property owner, small business owner with my wife, and actively involved in a number of community organizations. I have some general comments. I've not attended all these meetings, only a few, so I'd like to make just a couple of general observations. And I'd start that by taking a paraphrase out of the preamble to the charter. It says, "This determination of our county's form of government enables us to manage our local resources with competence, accept the benefits and responsibility of local control, and be responsive to the needs of local citizens." And I think, I haven't heard any discussion about that, but I think that's really important for what the real purpose of the charter is and what it does. I believe that our county is well-run, fiscally sound. The current commissioner structure is effective, and as reflected by the many difficult decisions that I've seen made over the 17 years that I've been here, I'm sure many before that, while staying within the constraints of our financial capabilities, our resource limitations. This county is one of the few charter counties that is in the type of both fiscal and organizational condition that we are in. We are the exception, not the rule, from what I can determine. Our economy remains weak, and as all of us know. Therefore, we need to be cautious that we don't overregulate and restrain growth. So in your deliberations, I think we need to keep that in mind. We need to promote economic growth and improving the economic base here. The 22 pages of the charter, when I was running for the Charter Commission, I went through it a number of times, and that I found it to be brief, relatively speaking, for a charter, and pretty clear. It was easy to understand. There was outdated material, et cetera, that it has to be revised, but it's not a difficult document to read and understand. I believe that changes and additions that we make should be limited to those things that are most essential. And from my own personal perspective, that talks to me about property rights, maintaining transparency in our local government, and being fiscally responsible. I have two comments I want to make on specific issues that were raised in a couple of prior meetings that I have been able to attend. And they're just my view of those issues. I would recommend that we maintain our current three-commissioner structure. I think it's very effective, as demonstrated by the way this county has been managed and run over the years with three commissioners. It's efficient. Our county has, I think, just under 80,000 or just over. I'm out of time.
Okay. Well, you're out of time, but go ahead and give us your second recommendation.
Okay, yeah, okay. Let me go to the second one then. So transparency was the other on that. The second issue is I think we should retain the county administrator position. In my view, our commissioners are elected to set policy either through law, regulation, ordinance, whatever, to provide leadership, which is probably one of the most important aspects of it, and to articulate a vision for our county. I do not think that they should be spending their time managing day-to-day operations, processes, and procedures, and people. That's not what I would elect a county commissioner to do.
Okay.
So I think it requires that administrative function. We would most likely need to
Jerry, I'll
add
ask you
commissioners.
to tie it up.
Okay, we add commissioners, and not all have the same responsibilities. And the administrative position allows us to articulate clear responsibility, accountability, and authority as set down by the charter of the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jerry, be sure and sign that. Did you sign? I know you.
Yeah, I have a copy.
No, but I know you told us who you were, but did you sign in the sheet?
Oh, I did.
On that? Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
Can we request that he give us those written?
He's handing them in to Trish.
Thank you.
And those will be attached to the minutes
Right.
from this evening's meeting.
So, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Seeing no other interest, we will close the public comment and move to approval of the minutes. Did you all get a chance to read these minutes? They came. Okay, well, let me take a moment then before we talk about approving them to make sure everyone has a chance to read them, because I know they were done today, a little late today. Thanks for getting them done, Trish. It was a quick turnaround from the last meeting.
I sent everyone the link for the download as well with all the attachments.
Motion to approve the minutes is drafted.
Okay, Ron has moved to approve the minutes as submitted, and second by Ted. We're ready for discussion. Nolan?
There's one minor thing that I saw, and that was in the very first paragraph, 10 days name needs to be corrected.
Selinda?
I think that the Jim Jones Junior Administrator discussed the attached information is a little short on what he presented right off the bat. I think he gave us an interpretation of your question of how he saw interpreted that he served the county, or the commissioner and the county. And he gave an interpretation of that I would like to see included in that. I don't have any proposed language that we have to do that, but I do think it's too short. He did provide some valuable information that I believe should be included. But I don't know how to go about it because I can't summarize it right now.
Okay, so Trish, can you, I know that you listed all those tapes. So is there some way you can modify a little bit about what Jim said and expand there?
I can expand what he talked about a little bit. I mean, he read from the charter about his job duties and those kinds of things.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the minutes. I'll get you just a second. So Linda has asked actually for a significant modification. So do you want to then postpone adoption of these minutes till you see what they look like in the modified form? Okay, so do I get the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion then to withdraw the motion, or should we just vote it down?
I can withdraw.
So what are your choice? What do you want to do?
I said I could withdraw.
Okay, so the motion's been withdrawn. Ted, did you withdraw your second?
I just wanted to make one comment and then I will
Okay.
withdraw it. And that is, Nola brings up a good point. There are a number of items in here which could have a lot more detail. And it's just a matter of policy. Do we want very abbreviated minutes or do we want more detailed minutes? And that's up to the Charter Review Commission.
Well, it's also up to time constraints for Trish, how detailed they can be, and usually we do get attachments, so. But it is basically, Jim Jones's presentation is pretty truncated here compared to Benedict and Nichols, so. Noah?
My feeling was that because the agenda item reads that his discussion was in the attached information, the attachment we were able to take home with us, that was very detailed. And had it been attached, I think that Trish would be fine with that entry.
But what's Linda's point is that he answered some questions during the question and answer period, which was not part of the attached information. That was her concern. So do I have just a consensus that we will postpone adoption of these minutes until next meeting when they will be reprinted and modified?
Are there any other changes?
And if you downloaded it, those 45 pages in Jim's report was in that. And so was the assessors in detail. That's not part of our minutes?
No, what Selinda's asking for is a little brief discussion about the question and answer period with Jim. Not all I realize there was a
Attachment.
lot of documents
There was.
given to us, those will continue to be attached, but just modifying a little bit this part of them. Yes, sir.
I'm totally in favor of getting some more detail, but I think we need to be careful that we don't get to the point where we're doing a transcription
Exactly.
of the entire, the entire event. And this is supposed to be a high-level look at, and then you can go into the documents if you need greater detail.
Right. Okay, so then I'm going to take the consensus that we will come back next time and revisit the minutes of March 11. So Trish, correspondence, we have a couple more quick things and we're getting to our county officials, which I told them they start at 6:50. Correspondence, Trish?
Ted Miller sent something on behalf of Roger Fight and others about making the prosecutor a nonpartisan position. I have correspondence from Ed Bowen regarding special meetings of the Charter Review Commission, a citizen's claim and complaint. And then Ed mentioned last week that he'd sent in 4 comments through the web, and I did find one dated January 5th that will be part of these minutes. I have a Pearl Rains Hewitt sent the schmeetings, what's the big deal that she talked about last week. I believe I have one other piece here. And then I forwarded something from Robert Crittenden, and then he sent a second one that said this is to overshoot the other one. He did send me another copy of that today. It's to replace the first one that I sent you. So,
Thank you. So what I'd like to do, the reports of Finance and Open Public Meeting Act training is very brief. What we just moved that down to post officials' presentations so that we can honor our time schedule that we gave to our presenters. Is that okay?
yes.
All right. So Mary Ellen Winborn, Director of BCD, will be our first presenter. As a reminder of the format is that you have been allocated 10 minutes for your presentation. Within those 10 minutes, we'd like to hear your roles and responsibilities, basically how do they interact with the charter, and if you want to share any proposed changes to the charter, be our guest. That will be the first 10 minutes. The second 10 minutes will be question and answer period from the commissioners, and we'll be as strict with the commissioners, telling them when 10 minutes is up as we are with you. Okay? Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. What are my responsibilities and how do they interact with the charter? And do I have any ideas for proposed changes?
Microphone.
Okay, you might need the microphone closer to you. You have a quiet voice anyway, so.
Okay, is that better?
Right to you, sir.
Okay, how's that? Good. That's all right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Let's see. My responsibilities are to administer, enforce, and advise the county commissioners on all DCD laws except for health. Laws that are pertaining to the environment, natural resources, land, and shoreline development. For example, land development includes helping the developers with land divisions, contractors and homeowners with zoning codes, building codes, and fire codes. Natural resources, our long-range planning efforts include the Dungeness River project. Shoreline development, this includes projects such as the Shoreline Master Plan that is in process right now of being implemented. We have presented this work in draft form throughout the county, and then the Planning Commission with the DCD hosted hearings throughout the county to receive public input, and now this input is being evaluated and categorized is in the evaluating and categorizing stage. The environment, we have our critical codes, environmental policy, watershed planning, and floodplains. When issues come up, it is my responsibility to identify, prioritize, research these issues, and address them with the public's and the planning commissions and the staffs, as well as legal input. Then take these issues and draft an ordinance and present that to the commissioners for their approval or approval with amendments. For example, we've had a bikini barista stand in project review come through the department this past month. And the applicant wants to build on 101, and we do not have any laws on our books for this type of limited apparel use, nor do we have any laws or ordinances for adult entertainment and where something like this goes, where this use would go or belong. And we need to look at other communities and see what they have done with these type of issues and what laws are in place to address this. And that is what's happening right now. And that's what happened this morning. We went to let the commissioners know what we're doing. Let's see. And we're also implementing the position for a code enforcement field officer right now. We have a list of 17 applicants, and we're going to do some interviews in a couple of weeks or next week, hopefully. So anyway, I'm in the process of figuring out what to do about hiring a building official, because, to try to stay budget neutral, that's been kind of a challenge in itself. So, do I have any ideas or proposed changes for the Department of Community Development? If this were to be on the ballot as an appointed position, I would definitely check yes. However, I can see many advantages of it being an elected position, because I get to prioritize. So it gives me more freedom to do what I believe needs to be done in the department. So, any questions?
You're very fast. Okay, so we will reset the clock here, and we'll entertain questions and answers. Questions from the commission. We'll start with Ken, and then I see Don. Did you have your hand up? Okay, we'll do Ken and Don.
One of my biggest concerns about the position you hold being elected versus appointed is that traditionally, historically, and almost universally in this country, it's a position that has very specific skills, education, and experience requirements. If it were to stay an elected position, do you think it's possible to craft RCW acceptable requirements for that position to make it equivalent?
I've asked that, and what I continue to get, and Mark can probably speak to this, the only prosecutors and judges have to have requirements. You only have to be 18 and above to run for public office.
More or less.
So I don't think there is anything.
Okay, Don, and then Mike, and then Ron, and then
My
Steve.
comment speaks to some of the issues that Ken has been dealing with. When I was in the district commission kind of thing, it does speak to qualifications there of having some background in why you should be able to draw lines and things of that sort. If we're doing that, but we're not doing that for anybody else, a much more important position, it seems like there might be a gap there that would be appropriate to insert in the charter so that somebody in your particular position or other positions in the county that are essentially professional in every regard need to be qualified somehow. What do you think of that?
No, I think that's a great idea if it's possible. Yes.
Because it seems like it might be possible given
Okay.
my quick review of this.
Okay.
If we have to have something of much lesser importance qualified, then we should have something more significantly qualified as well.
Thank you. Mike? And one of the tables here that are sharing a mic, please remember to try and get the mic close to where you are.
I'm just going to mention the last meeting, the sheriff had some ideas on certification of law enforcement officials at various levels. So you might talk to the sheriff to give you some that ability.
Hey, Ron, you're next.
Yeah, mine still gets to that election versus appointed, your position. I thought I heard you say it should be appointed, but that there were some good reasons to have it elected. Since you've been in the office and then you also had to run for re-election, or for election, do you feel it should be? What are your feelings on it?
Well, I'm not a big risk taker, believe it or not. I ran for office, but I'm not a big risk taker. So, the worst applicant would be better qualified than 18 and a voter. So I think that you're assured of a bench line or a benchmark of a better qualified person just from just from starting,
By appointing?
by appointment.
By-
But that doesn't mean somebody that's qualified couldn't run, but it's very, when you think about what it takes for somebody to run for public office, you know, you have to have the flexibility in your life to do it, you have to, you know, because if you're working full-time, it's really a hard thing to do for most people, or you have to have a spouse that's supporting you. I mean, how do you find the people to run for this office when you're working full-time? So, or any office, it's really a very narrow range of people that can do that, retiree, or, you know, so you just don't have, the pool's not very big. So,
Okay, and Steve, you were next?
I know that we have a shoreline master plan that the state requires. Does the county have a master plan? And if so, is that under your purview?
does the state have?
No, does our county have a master plan for our county? And is that something that the community development department oversees?
I believe that would be the comprehensive plan. That's probably what you're talking about. All the land use, zoning, transportation, historic, is that what the type of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, that would be considered like the master plan for where you want to put things?
Right, yes, we did. We have a comprehensive.
Okay, is that under the
Yes,
purview of?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ted and other people, Ted, then Barbara, anybody else? Okay.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on Don's comment. But clearly, the Charter Review Commission does have the right to impose requirements on the elected office of DCD in terms of qualifications, just like we could for sheriff and so forth. We can't for prosecuting attorney, but we can for most other offices. And the only question is what those requirements should be. Do you have an opinion as to what requirements the DCD director should have to meet in order to run?
Well, they probably should have a background in planning or planning, land use, public administration, architecture, engineering. They should have some type of background in those type of degrees.
Okay, Barb?
That was the exact same question I had, but yes.
Okay. Do I see anyone else?
Natural resources.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. And next, presentation, I believe, is Shoona. Welcome, and you heard the format. The 10 minutes, 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
All right.
How quick is her?
All right, thank you.
Okay, so thanks for having me here tonight. It's nice to see all the cases that I recognize from all summer long. As the county auditor, I wear many different hats for the county. I'm the ex officio supervisor of elections. We conduct elections for the federal, state, and most local offices. We maintain the voter registration for the county and sync our system with the state's database so that we match all the other counties across the state. Document recording is another function of my office. We record and maintain land deeds, liens, community property agreements, military discharges, and various other records. The auditor is also a passport agent for the U.S. Department of State. We also are agents for the Washington Department of Licensing. So we provide vehicle and vessel licensing services for area residents. And we also oversee the sub-agents in SWIM and in Forks. We also do some of the accounting work for the county. The auditor is considered the chief financial officer and ex officio state auditor. My chief accountant is responsible for the annual report, and the fiscal specialists are responsible for accounts payable and payroll. The auditor is also the agent of record for filing of legal claims against the county, and I also maintain a list of agents of records for all the tax assessors in the county. My office is also responsible for processing the mail that comes into and goes out of the county each and every day. As a charter county, the auditor does not have the budget duties that some other auditors have. The auditor is not the clerk of the board in our county either, but still keeps all the files for the warrants that they approve. The auditor is the only county official who can sign the warrants issued by the county. And the auditor's office is also involved with the state auditor's office when it comes to reviewing the county finances and performance. The auditor is a member of the county finance committee, which meets quarterly and makes reports and recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. The auditor is also a member of the county canvassing board, which certifies and oversees elections. So my position interacts with the charter in many different ways. Number one, any changes to the charter will be by election, which will be through my office. Article 7 is elections. Article 8 is the public interest, which is referendums, initiatives, petitions, and recalls. Article 11 is charter review, amendment, and repeal. And then Article 12, the general provisions. There's section 12.50, which is the claims against the county, and 12.70, which is the oath in offices and bonds. So all of those interact with the auditor's office. So I do have a couple ideas for proposed changes in the charter. Article 7, under elections, section 7.50, vacancies. This section still refers to independent candidates. We no longer put independent candidates on the ballot, but we can use states no party as provided by state law. So my suggestion would be to clean up the language to correspond with the current law. Also, when I was reading that section, I noticed that there's nothing in there about nonpartisan offices. So I guess I was going to suggest that maybe if we cleaned up the section about the independent candidates, that it also said something in the effect of, in the event that the official in office immediately prior to the vacancy was that's where the independent candidate is in there, it would say states no party or nonpartisan candidate. The vacancy shall be filled by, and then another area would be Article 11, Charter Review, Amendment, and Repeal. This was in subsection 11.10.10, election and period of office. And the only reason that I bring this up is because each year there seems to be more and more candidates running for charter review. This year we had a recount in District 1. We almost had a recount in District 2. We spent 4 days looking through 6,744 ballots individually and found one more vote for one candidate, which didn't change the outcome of the election. And so I was just proposing whether or not the Charter Commission would want to think about not having recounts just for charter review. We had one district, I think, had 17. There was another district that had 19 candidates. When you have that many candidates in one position, those votes get spread so thin that you're bound to have a recount in at least one district. So, other than that, my predecessor was very good at keeping up with the charter and bringing stuff to your attention each year that she was able to.
Thank you. Questions? So let's see. Then we started you before. We'll start with Steve this time, then we'll go to Ken, and then Ted.
In terms of your department, you said that you kind of take counts payable as part of it. When I'm looking at other counties that have charters, we seem to be the only county that kind of separates our finance into two different departments. Some of it's in the treasurer's office, and some of it is in the auditor's office. Do you see a benefit of combining those so we don't have as much duplication in regards to having like just an overall finance department that you would normally see like the city of Port Angeles has, rather than splitting those departments up?
I'm going to say that's going to be very hard for me to answer, only because it's so new, and I've been so focused on the election side right now that I haven't really delved into the financial side of it too much. I think if I made I know we do accounts payable, so each office does their own accounts payable. When it comes into our office, we are auditing all of those accounts payables, if that makes sense to you.
Because I've seen as from like a junior taxing district, like our district being the Williams Shore Pool District, the treasurer has the right to be our treasurer, but in practicality, all the work gets done at the auditor's office, where the majority of all the bills being paid and all that kind of stuff. And so it feels kind of unbalanced, where I know that the treasurer collects the money, but we end up working more with the accounts payable part as well. And I just thought if there would be if there's any logic to having an encompassing finance department that handled payable and receivables.
As a part of an answer to your question, Steve, if you look back at your record in 1989, the charter review did propose to the public that there be a Department of Finance, and the public said no at that time. Doesn't mean you can't revisit it, but it has been discussed and put on the ballot. Okay, now my list of Steve, now Ken, you're next.
Hi, I just want to make sure I understood what your idea on
Microphone.
your first idea was a kind of a two-part thing regarding Article 7 and 7.50 vacancies. And the second part, I thought what you said is to add some language regarding how vacancies for an office that had been held by an independent or nonpartisan candidate should be, I think what you were trying to say, or I'm guessing what you were trying to say, was that those positions should be filled by a like candidate, just like a partisan office would be filled. Is that what you were?
So, the first part was that the independent candidates, we no longer have that. They used to be able to be on the ballot like that, now they have to stay state to a party. And then the second part of it was just referring to the section of vacancy does not say anything about nonpartisan. So what I did is took that sentence at the very end that says, in the event that the official in office immediately prior to the vacancy was and right there is where it says independent, I had suggested putting the state's no party or nonpartisan, and then I kind of quit the sentence because it was just whatever it had said in the rest of it.
That makes more sense.
Okay.
I should have listened first.
Ken, you're next.
Yeah. I agree, it's a little embarrassing that we haven't cleaned up that language after we made everything nonpartisan except with the prosecuting attorney and the county commissioners. But I wanted to just comment on your comment about having no recount in the event of took place. Jerry Sen and I were the ones who were forced the taxpayers to have a recount with a 28 vote difference. I completely agree with you. I had more people talk to me and say, is it really necessary for the taxpayers to pay for a recount for a 5th place? Is it finished in a charter review commission? And it seems to me it should not be. And I agree. I also think for PCOs, we shouldn't have a recount either. You just go with whatever the numbers say. And so I strongly support what you just proposed.
Other comments, Sue?
Would you kindly submit that, your written description for us so that we have a record of it? Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, go on.
I didn't really have a question. I had a comment that I do not support the idea of having a recount. To me, there's a good opportunity for collusion if you're not careful with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. So our next two speakers will be Jim McEntire, our County Commissioner from District 1, and Bill Peach from County Commissioner District 3. You can opt to come one at a time, or if you want to sit as a team, whichever is your choice.
What do you think, sir?
And I talked to Commissioner Peach, and what we set up was that because Commissioner McEntire will be first, he'll get 10 minutes because he's going to tell us about what commissioners do and all that kind of stuff. And then Commissioner Peach said he didn't really need to repeat that information for us, so he will be giving it. So Commissioner Peach will be giving us a 5-minute presentation, basically on how does he see his office interacting with the charter and any suggested changes. So, okay, thank you for coming.
How do you like to do that? Good evening, Chair Turner, Commissioners. Thanks very much for the opportunity to come and visit with you this evening and hopefully respond well to whatever questions you have. What does a commissioner do? Basically everything in Article 2 of the charter. In essence, I think the commissioner is one of 3 members of both an executive board and a legislative body. And that's saying a lot, but that's really the distilled essence of what a commissioner does. A commissioner acts as a policymaker, acts as a quorum or maybe a dissenter for any executive action that the commission might want to undertake. And so that's the long and the short of it. The practical thing that a commissioner does is try to gather up information from particularly that commissioner's district, but all of the county, because all citizens vote for a commissioner and for any countywide elected office for that matter, and bring that information back to the commission so that those kind of things from our constituents can be considered, discussed, decided, and acted upon, executed. So it's largely a representative kind of a function. I'm in a large sense, I believe I'm a delegate from my district in particular to the county commission. And so that's the job description. I don't have any really precise things that I see need to be fixed or taken out of the charter. I think it works pretty well. It's certainly survived the test of time. It's been around for a good long while, several decades. The only thing I might suggest to you in your review of the charter is to be alert for concentrations of power. If there be any such, our system of government is based on the concept of checks and balances. I don't have any real areas to point to, but that would be, if I were sitting in your seat, that would be what I would be looking for as one item. And the other thing is perhaps to think of policies that might be good to mandate a commission, either present or future, undertake to pass that would, of course, be based on state law, of course, but might give us a little bit better standing in discussing particular items of importance to our citizens with state agencies. We both, state and local governments, operate under a similar set of laws as it relates to things environmental, things water. Of course, there's different responsibilities apportioned at different levels of government, but the statutes really govern all of us. So those are the only 2 thoughts that I might share with you this evening. I'll be more than happy to yield to my colleague Bill Peach and let him do his intro, and then perhaps we can kind of tag team answers to questions, or you can just ask me, or however you like to do it. It really doesn't matter. So
You can, between you and Commissioner Peach, do whatever is most comfortable.
Sure, that's fine with me.
That's fine. If I join it.
Go, I got a chair. We'll tag team this.
Well, first, I thank you very much for the time that you've committed to this process. And I recall I've had a chance to attend some of your meetings and recall one of your early meetings. You dealt with the idea of, after you've identified the issues through this process and identified those that you intend to bring to the voters, that you might take the rest of the issues and forward them on to the county commissioners. And I really do hope you'll do that. And there's a tremendous amount of work from some really, really bright people. And I know you're going to have to make political decisions on how many issues you put on the ballot. And I still see the opportunity, if you've got a good idea, for the commissioners to work with it. On the issue of the roles and responsibilities of the county commissioner, I refer you to a website called MRSC. That's the Municipal Research Service Center. And when you get to that website, please scroll down to the county commissioner's guide. It's a really good document. I think actually a couple of pages from this document have been shared. But a couple of things I'd like to share with you in the document. There's been some conversation with regard to whether a commission is better than a council, and I've pondered that issue. I share with you that the commissioner form is appropriate for Clallam County, and I note that when you look at all of the other counties that have selected the council form, there's only one that has lesser population, Sound One, but all of them have far more economic activity. In fact, another website that I'd refer you to is called Plan Washington. And under their Metrics Explorer, if you take a peek at Washington State's per capita GDP, it identifies roughly 1/3 of the counties in the state of Washington that have a higher per capita GDP than the national average, and the other 2/3 are less. Every one of the counties that have moved to a council system are in that category of a per capita GDP higher than the national average, with the exception of Clallam County. I think that gives us a sense for the activity level that those other council people are engaged in, the issues that they manage. Maybe it's best, and their voters have said, it's best that they focus on just the legislative function. I like to say that the idea of having an elected administrator is something I caution you on. I've now whopping 75 days on the job. And I'll tell you the thing that I really do appreciate is the continuity. Jim Jones is a resource that is not only able to identify, when I bring an issue to his attention, the history on it, but chapter and verse, documents that have been produced, and that saves me a tremendous amount of time. You would lose potentially a resource if you move to a system where that position changes through the election process. And finally, the document that I mentioned to you, the Commissioner's Guide, in section 3, page 9, talks about a consolidated city-county form of government. And I'm not sure if that conversation has occurred here with you, and it might be something to consider. I don't know that we're ready today, but here's the issue I share with you. That type of government provides efficiencies in terms of, instead of having 4 sets of government, you have one collaborative set. And there are some savings that can be had through administrative costs, through our law enforcement, through our court system. And the reason I share it with you is that our financial situation here in Clallam County is not improving at the rate that we would like it. And there'll be a day when we have to take a look at alternatives. So that's my 5 minutes. Turn to Ken.
Okay, so let me get my list of who's got the money. You haven't asked the question yet, so you'll be first. And then we've got way up here, Barb. And who else has their hand up? Ted, and Ron, and Ken. That'll do for now, okay? And Glenn.
It looks like you have stirred the hornet's nest. But I've always been interested in this problem of 3. Sorry. I've always been interested in how you deal with this problem with 3. And when you meet in the hall, a hello does not constitute a meeting, I wouldn't think. But I'm just curious, and obviously it's played out rather well in this county in some way. I don't know quite how it happens, but can you comment about that? About how you deal with it on a daily basis?
A great deal of self-control. Each one of us are very well aware of the Open Public Meetings Act and how that restricts our interaction with each other, or channels it, I guess probably is a better way to say that. And so we are very diligent about doing that. When we go into executive session, we always have our either prosecuting attorney or a representative of the prosecuting attorney in that session with us to make sure that we stay within the white lines. So it's really an awareness of the act and a willingness to follow it and just be real diligent and not trying to step over that line. That's true for any governing body. That's not exclusive to a 3-member commission. That's true for anybody. So.
It certainly avoids the concentration of power in some ways.
True.
That you talked about.
Barb, you're next.
It has been suggested or recommended that the county administrator should be eliminated. Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, it's my opinion. I think that's a poor decision. The fact is, I spend probably 3/4 of my time networking with people, not just in District 3, but throughout the county. And especially District 3 because of how it's very spread out. And some of the activities that I'm involved in, working with some of the communities, I network with members of the Tweed Tribe by going to Drum Circle in the evening. I network with members of in the Clallam Bay area by attending Lions Club in the evening. And it's very nice to know, after spending quite a fair amount of time traveling, that I have the ability to come back to the office and reach for information and know that scheduling of the work that we do is being handled in a competent manner.
Commissioner McEntire?
I agree. And I would make this additional point. The job of a commissioner is not exclusively, but largely outside the courthouse. We are, and I didn't mention this in my opening, but we do, each one of us sit on a large number of boards and commissions that are, a lot of that is driven by state law, interlocal agreements between several counties to do a particular kind of thing. So we are out more than we're in that respect. And from a continuity of effort standpoint, it's really important to have someone with some corporate memory and someone that can be kind of in the courthouse largely all the time. The last thing, and this is really the important point, I think, the budget and executing the budget belongs with the commission. And so the administrator performs a really important comptrollership function in making sure the budget is executed the way that the commissioners voted it into being. And that's a large effort. There are myriad details of actually making a budget work, and so I don't know if the commission could be really good at doing that, because that takes just a daily effort. That would require us to be in the courthouse a lot of the time, when the largest part of our duties, I think, as Commissioner Peach indicated, and myself, is outside the courthouse with our constituents.
Ted?
Jim, in your address, you mentioned that you're concerned about concentration of power, a concern I also share. I'm wondering if we expanded the number of commissioners from 3 to 5, it would help not only in concentration of power issues, but it would help enormously in the Open Meetings Act issue, because actually you have 2 commissioners actually talking to each other and maybe come up with some good ideas without having to immediately violate the OMA. I was wondering what, I'd like to get both your opinion and Mr. Peach's opinion on that.
Ted, that's a really good question, and it would certainly do that. But oddly, if you turn that over and look at it from the other side, which I've thought about, it would actually mean less transparency, because everything that the 3 of us do, legislatively or in an executive action, has to be out in the public. It has to be in a noticed meeting. Whereas if you had a 5-member set of conversations that were happening outside the view of the public, so to say, that would mean less transparency rather than more. Secondly, that would obviously be more expensive, not only for the additional number of commissioners, but every elected official has a chief deputy or a charter exempt position, kind of as a support position. And so to the extent that you increase the number of commissioners, you would increase by the same number the amount of administrative staff that go with that enlarged commission. So you get actually double, I couldn't say double the cost, but double the head count as you increase the size of the commissioner council. So just things to think about. I don't think there's any magic with a 3 or a 5-member or 7-member thing like that. It's just a matter of what is the appropriate size and scope of the county, and how should government be sized accordingly. So.
Well, I was really fortunate that I was able to step into an environment where the protocol of the commissioners having a conversation only occurs at the work session on Monday and on Tuesday. And it's really nice that that protocol is embraced. It makes it easy. This morning I went and told Jim I brought some banana bread, and Trish saw me talking to Jim, and she was...
Trish is a strict disciplinary to our great benefit.
It does. And I guess the other reason that I highly recommend you consider 3 is that of all the things we do, I believe transparency is one of the most important things that we can do. And that is achieved with 3, much easier than it is with 5 or 7.
Thank you. Okay, Ron?
Sheriff Benedict, when he was here at our last meeting, suggested, strongly recommended having a salary commission. What are each of your thoughts on that, and how could the Charter Review Commission play a role in that?
You could certainly choose to mandate the existence of that. It's a discretionary act for the commissioners at this moment. There's statutory law that gives us the ability to do that should we choose to do that. We can certainly, as a Charter Review Commission, mandate that if that seems good. I support that idea. Many of you saw the discussion that showed up in the newspaper in the preceding months last year. So it seems like that's a good idea. There's ups and downs to everything, of course.
Sure.
I would note also that the recent charter that was installed in Clark County actually specifies the salary in the charter itself and a mechanism for changing it. So there are many different ways that you could go about doing that. Whatever you choose as best would suit me just fine.
I think it's a good idea, especially for the county commissioners. And it's very appropriate that a special commission address the compensation for the county commissioners. My concern about all of the other appointed and elected positions having their salary established by a commission is that there's the possibility the commission says, cut them all in half, double them all. And whatever the commission says, if that's the way you organized that authority, is exactly the way it'll be executed. But I do think that presents some problems in terms of financial management, and you might want to consider that as you identify. That's why I suggested a minimum start with just the county commissioners.
Okay, Ken, you're next.
First, just a comment.
Can you get that microphone?
I just wanted to share an observation on the discussion about transparency and the number of commissioners. By law, 3 commissioners suggests a mandate of absolute transparency, but I would suggest the converse would be equally possible. It would be incredibly easy to abuse. What I was actually going to ask was for Commissioner McEntire. In your introduction, you cautioned us to be wary of concentrations of power, and I'm smiling because the subsequent conversation sort of seems to answer my question, but the single greatest concentration of power, and in my humble estimation, a unique concentration of power in American government is in Article 2, combining legislative authority and executive authority. My original question was going to be, I thought you were maybe suggesting that executive authority be separated, an county executive, which is not uncommon in some other counties in the state. But then the subsequent discussion suggests the opposite of that. But I guess I still want to ask the question because I too am wary of a concentration of power, and it seems to me that currently in our county we have an exceptional concentration of power.
That is really the conundrum of our state's form of government, I think. Other than a separately elected executive, which of course adds to the size. You don't want to have an even number of anything. San Juan County had an even number of commissioners, and they found that just didn't work. And that was because probably of their unique geography. I'm just guessing at that. But that would be the only way to really achieve a true separation of powers. But the charter is pretty specific, as is state law, about what is an executive act and what is a legislative act. So it's just up to each one of us commissioners to understand what role we're playing at that particular moment and try to act accordingly. It does tend to get blended together, and I would agree with you in that aspect. But with a finite supply of money to pay for government, I don't know how you get out of some of those conundrums like that. So I don't know of a way out of that other than just mandating that the county executive be elected. That's what we deal with.
Well, wouldn't that replace?
Ken, before you get into a dialogue here, then on here,
I guess the concern that I have with regard to the concentration of power is any system that doesn't allow a free flow of the information. However that free flow occurs, any citizen has to have the ability to access the information with which the commissioners are making their decisions. And any system that prevents that or inhibits it, you need to be very suspect of. And so that's how I personally look at this issue of transparency. People want to know. So in today's day and age, there's absolutely no excuse for not providing that information.
Just, if I might, just one quick concluding thought. The way out of that dilemma, as it exists currently, is that you need 2 votes to accomplish anything. So it depends on the power of the idea and your ability to persuade another commission member to vote with you. And that's, I think, the current way out of that dilemma. But that's the best I can offer.
So Ken, what I prefer to do, we have 2 other people who have asked to ask questions. Come back if you want to follow up questions if you have time. Okay, Steve?
I have a 2-part question. One of the first one's for Commissioner McEntire. If I was correct in hearing Commissioner Peach, he was advocating removing the executive portion of the commission's job and bringing it to an administrator level, and then just being a legislative body. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Can I answer that? That's not correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to misinterpret you. That's not what you said?
That's correct. If you look at other counties that have separated those responsibilities, the thing that stands out in those counties is their economic activity and the multitude of issues associated with that. Anything from private property rights, social issues, commerce, etc. And to handle that workload, there's a division of labor that says the council focuses only on the legislative activity. In Clallam County, we have nowhere near that type of workload. And in fact, I would argue that a commissioner gets a lot of positive feedback by, first participating in that legislative activity and then gets to deal with the implementation of that through the executive action that has to be taken. It's positive to have those two. So I apologize.
Okay, that answers my question then. The second question is, we heard from citizens about several elected positions turning from partisan to nonpartisan. I just wanted to get both of your feedbacks on your opinion of turning the commissioner's position into a nonpartisan position.
I don't think so. At the end of the day, because there are partisan positions, although I don't speak to the other two commissioners before I walk into a meeting, I have a sense for their values. And by looking at, their position on a public record, I can, begin to formulate what I need to do in order to put a persuasive case in front of the commissioners if what I'm trying to do is to persuade them. So I actually think it is a good idea for the position to be partisan.
Steve, the only thing I could add is I was elected to a nonpartisan office before this office. I'm the same guy. Partisan or no, it doesn't mean you're not political. That's part of the job. So I don't know if it really makes a whole lot of difference, to be honest with you, but I'm comfortable with a letter behind my name. I was comfortable with an NP behind my name, no party. So.
Okay, Ike, you are next.
So citizens in a couple of meetings have mentioned that we should look at the idea of a citizens grand jury. Many people have talked about more transparency, accountability. I'm just curious, what's the status of the DCD investigation that was held? Two commissioners refused to talk about that in public. There were a couple of hiring situations where commissioners refused to talk about public money, public salaries. I'm just curious, is this board going to revisit those sort of issues, or are they just going to be ignored? And would one of the solutions be to have a citizen grand jury? And we can support that.
I actually had to do some research on what the grand jury concept was all about, and I don't really feel that I fully appreciate it. My concern is that does it interface correctly with our existing system? And I don't know about those gaps. The concept that the citizens should participate and engage and be heard, I fully support. It's just that if you end up creating a system that has an element that doesn't coordinate, I think you've done an injustice. And I don't know that system well enough to say that it will coordinate. What little I do understand is that concept was applicable many, many, many years ago, before the evolution of the kind of systems that we have today. I'll be looking forward to the recommendations that you have on it and whatever Mark comes up with, because I can't look at it. You as a lawyer probably can, but I can't look at it and convince myself injecting this is going to be seamless. So I'm a little concerned about it without more information. I'm middle of the road right now. The concept of supporting the public to engage, I support. The concept of disturbing our existing legal system, I'm really cautious about that.
We're down to our last minute, so Commissioner McEntire, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I have to admit that I really don't know enough about a grand jury system in Washington state law to give you a good answer on that. But as I've said before, in answer to the other question, Mike, I do believe the commission has discharged its duty in relation to that matter. So I don't personally have any plans to do anything further on that. That's done and over with as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we're right on time. Thank you very much. We did set aside 20 minutes for question and answer if you wonder why it went on so long, since it's 10 minutes each. So thank you.
Well, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and visit with you.
Thank you both for coming.
Thank you for your hard work.
And our last elected official we're hearing from tonight is Selinda Barkhuis, treasurer. Selinda, you already know the rules, format. And And then while Selinda's going down, what I'd like to do is when Selinda's finished, is for us to take a 5 or 7 minute break that allow anybody who didn't get a chance that wants to ask any elected officials here another question, personal level, and also then gives them an opportunity to leave before we resume for the rest of our discussion. So, okay, so Selinda.
Thank you. Before I begin, I hereby declare under penalty of perjury that the following statements that I'm about to give are true and correct to the best of my knowledge, information, and belief. Now, I previously handed out to you by handed out to you at the previous meeting my treasurer's 2015 tender and tax reports, and I hope you've had an opportunity or will have an opportunity to review it. And I actively seeking feedback because I hope to incorporate any feedback I get into future reports. Already heard from some people who have some corrections and questions that add to corrections. So, about the Clallam County Treasurer. Like the prosecutor and the sheriff, the position of county treasurer is a constitutional one. The treasurer's mandated constitutional and statutory duties are essential to the daily operations of all of the county's taxing districts, which in addition to the county itself include the 3 cities, the Port of Port Angeles, 2 hospital districts, 6 fire districts, 5 school districts, the library, and 3 swimming pools. The treasurer's extensive fiduciary duties include safekeeping and investing an average of $100 million in reserve taxpayer funds at any given time, billing for and collecting almost $80 million in property taxes and assessments each year, receiving in, distributing, and being accountable for some $250 million in total deposits each year, and timely funding school district payrolls, as well as bond payments on behalf of a number of taxing districts. To protect the public's money from loss, the Treasurer's Office is responsible for banking and warrant reconciliation duties that have to be performed every single banking business day, regardless of whether the courthouse is open, regardless of whether I have the staff to do it, and regardless of whether our technology is up to date and working. It is my personal goal to not become the 4th Clallam County Treasurer in a row to lose the public's funds. The Treasurer 3 back spent 4 years from hell defending against a claim of personal liability as a result of an unsuccessful investment that at least looked like, and he believed to be, a qualified investment, with the insurance company claiming that the loss was outside its liability insurance policy. In 2002, the Treasurer's Office lost 1 staff position to budget cuts, bringing staffing down to 6 people, the elected treasurer and 5 staff positions. In 2003, the year after the Treasurer's Office lost that position, Betts started stealing. All told, Betts stole over $600,000 over 6 years during the understaffed tenure of the last 2 county treasurers. In 2010, I campaigned on the promise that I would improve internal controls at the Treasurer's Office. During my first term, I significantly strengthened internal controls by segregating duties, maintaining dual control, and adding banking security measures. In the process, I determined that the Treasurer's Office was significantly understaffed and that the position that was lost in 2002 should be replaced. This understaffing is becoming more pressing at every single passing month, with 3 out of my 5 remaining staff positions heading into retirement, which will lose the Treasurer's Office over 80 years in institutional knowledge. The first one to retire will be the investment officer, who has been with the Treasurer's Office for over 20 years. Just last month, she caught and stopped an external fraud attempt on the Forks Hospital District via the warrant reconciliation process. Frankly, I'm not sure if any of the rest of us would have caught it. Just last year, the Chelan County Treasurer lost over $1 million in cyber fraud. Without adequate staffing, it is difficult to find the time to cross-train, let alone prepare for 3 out of my 5 staff retirements. This chronic understaffing is also significantly impacting our ability to keep the office doors open to provide the excellent customer services that we do to the very taxpayers who pay our salaries, with the REIT counter now regularly closed. The county commissioners don't have to face the taxpayers who expect to find the doors open but find them closed instead. But keeping the office doors open while maintaining strict dual control and segregation of duties is a balance So what should I give up on? Open office doors or internal controls? My issues for the Charter Review Commission. During last week's meeting, the county administrator explained that he interprets the charter language that calls for him to serve the commissioners and the county to mean that he serves the county commissioners individually and the county commissioners collectively. My first question to the Charter Review Commission is as follows. Under the charter, does the county administrator have any duties vis-a-vis the other elected officials? Or does the charter truly intend for the county administrator to only serve the county commissioners? Which brings me to the reason I am kept understaffed. Back in September of 2013, during my budget meeting with the county administrator, I requested one additional staff member to replace the one the treasurer's office lost in 2002. The county administrator agreed I needed additional staffing, but made his approval tit-for-tat contingent on my extending a multi-million-dollar loan out of the county's reserves to the city of Port Angeles. When I told the county administrator that such a loan was unlawful, he accused me of being righteous. I did refuse to make that loan, and my staff request to replace that position lost back in 2002 has been denied ever since. So my next question is this. Is trading staffing with the violation of a fiduciary duty a legitimate power to be exercised by the county administrator under the county charter? Which brings me to my third issue. Assuming this sort of tit-for-tat bargaining is not a legitimate power, where do I go for recourse? Under the charter, only the county commissioners can hold the county administrator accountable. But under the current state of our county government, everybody else at the county is subject to the county administrator's extensive powers, one way or the other. Department heads, including the county's human resource director, are directly subordinate to the county administrator. County employees are subject to the county administrator as the main enforcer of the county's personnel code and policies. And the elected officials are dependent on the county administrator for favorable staffing and budget recommendations. And that brings me to the following questions. Does the charter really intend for the county commissioners to be served by such an all-powerful assistant? And if the Charter Review Commission determines that the county administrator's current powers exceed those envisioned under the charter, then who has standing in what forum and under what cause of action to ensure that the people of Clallam County get the government they told us they wanted under their charter? Next, I would like the Charter Review Commission to weigh in on whether the county administrator has the authority to interpret the law and make recommendations that not only may or may not be correct, but that also directly contradict the stated position of the elected county treasurer involving millions of dollars in county reserve funds under her fiduciary duty to safekeep. Now, according to the sheriff, the county administrator apparently gets to do so under the criminal code. I may or may not agree with the sheriff, but what I want the Charter Review Commission to weigh in on is whether he gets to do so under the county charter, the county code, the county policies, and his employment contract. I believe there should be another accountability clause in the charter that is administered completely independent from the county to review the actions of the county administrator under the county's charter, code, policies, and his employment contract, with the authority to hold him appropriately accountable, including removal. For my final issue, I ask that the Charter Review Commission address the gross lack of transparency that currently pervades the county commissioner's decision-making process, as evidenced by the state auditor's finding that the county is not following its policy regarding budgeted transfers. This finding impacted millions worth of spending decisions by the county commissioners as administered by the county administrator, impacting the county general capital, the capital projects, the REIT 2, the Carlsbrook Sewer, and opportunity funds. I have tried to address these issues directly with the commissioners, but my attempts have been ignored and rejected at every turn. Along the way, Commissioner McEntire did inform me that my issues with the county administrator are mine to solve, and that's why I'm here. I am still trying to solve my issues with the county administrator, and I sincerely hope I will find some solutions here with the Charter Review Commission. Now, for more information about the issues I've outlined, including extensive documentation, I would respectfully request that you go to my blog at patoday.com. I will send out that link tomorrow, and I would be happy to answer whatever questions you may have at any time. And thank you for this opportunity to share my concerns.
You must have practiced that, you came right in. Okay, so I'm taking a list of who wants to ask questions. I see Glenn's hand up.
I just want to ask what that blog was.
And Ron, you have a question? Yeah, we'll get you. Okay, anybody else? Ted, you have a question? Barb has a question? Okay, we'll start with Glenn.
Selinda, I've been interested.
Okay, we need the mic.
Oh, sorry. I've been interested since knowing that you're an elected official, that you serve on this Charter Review Commission. And you do so because you think it's an appropriate thing for you to do, or you do so because you'd like to see change from your offices? Are you going about this to effect change within your job? Is that the purpose of your being on the Charter Review Commission, or do you like the idea of other electeds being on this commission as well?
No, I'm
Hey,
here.
Let me use the mic, please.
I'm here because I don't know where else to go with my issues. I do not think it's incompatible to hold this office. It might be incompatible for me to serve in the salary commission, and I will abstain from that, and I would abstain from any voting on salary. Although I might provide some information, but I will not vote on it. But the issue of whether I should serve both as treasurer and charter review, it should be considered that the county commissioners have the authority, already have the right to submit charter proposals at any time. So those elected officials have very much access to the charter. So as the county commissioners. As a commission, we are very dependent on the county commissioners as well. We operate under their budget authority. They dole out the resources, their staffing, and probably, as was offered to us, any information we may want. So the commissioners have incredible access to the charter. So this is another evidence to me of lack of imbalance. The commissioners have all the power, and from my perspective, I only have duties. I just have a whole lot of duties and responsibility and personal liability. So where do I have some power? Where do I have some right? Because right now I don't see I have anything, and along the way I'm just being told to sit down and shut up. And I'm hoping that this discussion about incompatibility is not just another attempt to tell me to sit down and shut up.
Okay, Ron, you have a question?
Just what was that blog you had?
PAtoday.com. I will send the link out tomorrow, so you'll just be able to click on it.
Ted?
Selinda, it seems to me, based on what you've said, your main concern really isn't with the county executive, it's with the budgetary power of the commissioners. With that budgetary power, they can basically make any elected official knuckle under by saying, we're not going to give you any money unless you agree to do X, Y, and Z. And I don't know of any way around that. I think it's an inherent power in the budgetary power.
I like to think there are limits, because otherwise you get a farce for a government, and the imbalance of power will be complete. If they say, why have elected positions then? Why don't have these independent fiduciary duties where I'm personally liable? I mean, how can I reconcile that? I mean, the whole purpose for having an elected county treasurer as a constitutional office is a balance of power, a check and balance mechanism.
I guess that's relied on the good faith action of all parties.
Okay. Because I have two other people to ask questions. Barb, you want to ask a question?
Yes, Linda. As a timekeeper, sometimes I get distracted, so I was watching the clock and I missed. What were your suggestions? What did you have for the suggestions for the county administrative position?
A review of whether what the government we have right now reflects what the charter intends. I mean, otherwise, why are we here if it's just a theoretical exercise? We have this document, but we don't have the government that it sets forth in there. Then, it's just a process. I mean, I think it's important that. So I think implementation and enforcement. How do we enforce the charter? How do we implement the charter? I don't have necessarily the answer, but that's why I'm here. I'd like to hear everybody else's opinion on how we get the government and the people tell us they want that we have in this document. Do we know we have this government? Because in my opinion, as the county treasurer responsible for safekeeping your $100 million, I'm telling you, we don't have the government that it says in the charter or the policies or the code. It's a farce. That's what I'm here to tell you. Now, you can ignore that.
Ron, I saw your hand up.
Well, I'm curious because you talk about the issue of power and the government the public wants. And an example of government the public wanted was an elected BCD director. And if they didn't have qualifications. I'm curious, the treasurer, as I'm looking here, doesn't have qualifications for that job, neither does the assessor or the auditor. So do you think then that the government the people want is a government that it can ascertain as to whether or not it can make a choice as to who should be in this position?
I'm sorry, I lost your question again.
Do you think the government the people want is a government where the people can ascertain who should be in elected positions?
You'll have to take the mic. So just, if you could just simply state your question.
Are you asking about my position, whether it should be elected or appointed?
Whether a group of these should be elected or appointed because of the ability for the people to oversee the government. And you were talking about concerns about consolidation of power under the county commissioners and an administrator who is the supervisor for all the appointed positions. So I'm trying to understand where's that balance based upon what the people want.
Well, I'm not quite sure. The balance that the people want. Well, that's, I guess, gets back to that phrase of the county administrator shall serve the commissioners and the county. What does that mean? What does the county mean? Does it mean the other, my concern is that there's a lot of power going into trying to manipulate me through my staffing. And I have no leverage back. All I have is a lot of duties that keep me in the office and trying to figure out how to keep the doors open. So, and I guess one of the questions I have is, do I have some sort of right to adequate staffing? Do I have some sort of right to perform my fiduciary duties without interference by the county administrator, an appointed assistant to the commissioners who only answers to the commissioners? There's that language in the charter that talks that the appointment of county administrators shall not change the relationship between commissioners and the constituents and the relationship between the elected officials, commissioners with the other elected officials. I think that's what it says in 6.2. So having this administrator, I think, very much changes the relationship between the commissioners and the taxpayers and voters, the constituents. Because this administrator filters and foils a lot of the information, and there's very much a change in the relationship between the commissioners and the other elected officials because of the interference by the administrator.
Okay, we're down to last couple minutes. Nolan, you haven't asked a question. Nolan, and then Ken. Am I missing any other hands? Okay, Nolan.
I'm presuming that this is probably a redundant question, but are you going to include that handwritten to Trish so we can actually see
Oh,
that?
yes, absolutely.
And then I started this whole meeting off with my concern about incompatible offices, and I really, really strongly feel that's what's happening here. Even though I think you had valid concern, I don't think that it should have been done with you holding both offices.
That's okay. That, instead of a question, that's a personal opinion, so I think we'll go to Ken for the question.
Selinda, do you think separating the legislative and executive authorities provided for under Article 2, i.e. An elected county executive in lieu of a appointed county administrator, do you think that would help solve any of the problems you're outlining? I'm not asking if I have the answer. I'm just
part of the problem that I see is not so much what the document says, it's how we hold people accountable that are in these positions. If the position is held by somebody who is, well, in my opinion, not abiding by the policies, the codes, and the charter, and what do you do about that? I mean, I think that's the issue with DCD director or appointed. I mean, why did the DCD director become elected? Let's talk about that. way back when, the reason that people wanted it to become elected or started that was because they felt the position, which was held then by Bob Martin, and as an appointed under the commissioners, was not responsive to their needs. So they went through all voting to change that to an elected, and then they voted him out. They voted him out basically twice. And the county hired him right back. And now he serves as the county administrator's #2. So if people didn't think this was a responsive person that the county hired back, I don't think that's very responsive. So here's the county administrator. In my opinion, it's an issue of accountability. Now, how we get that accountability, I'm not sure what the answer for that is. That's what I would like to explore. I don't have a cookie cutter solution to that, but it's the issue of accountability of a position that's apparently only accountable to 2 people.
Ms. Linda, I'm going to have you wind up, so.
Okay, am I done?
I guess so. But thank you. Thank you for coming. And as I say, we're going to take a 5-minute break so that if you want to have a personal conversation. Wow, with a response like that, I wish I had this for my kids who are growing up. So anyway, we are back into order, and thanks to all of our elected officials for coming today. We're going to be put off on our agenda hearing the reports. We have 2 reports. One is finance from Barb, the first or second vice chair, whatever vice chair you are. And then Sue Ford, the other vice chair, is going to deal with the Old Public Meetings Act training update. So finance for Barb.
Okay, we had a beginning balance of $5,100 as of March 9th. We had spent $790.56, and our remaining balance on March 9th was $4,309.40.
And for the record, like 96% of that expenditure has been mileage reimbursement.
Correct.
The little treats you get have been like $30 for
And water.
Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you. Any questions of Barb? Thanks for keeping track of that. Sue, you're going to track our Open Public Meetings Act training.
Everybody has taken the Open Public Meetings Act training with the exception of our newest members.
Okay, and Don, you will have, you will have 90 days if you do it online.
Oh.
It's very simple, and so Trish will send you
Trish
the
will help me
link.
out.
You just click in there, and once you have completed your training, you'll let Trish and Sue know, because Sue is tracking where we are. Okay.
Do I have to have someone with me for open meetings?
No, I think I just lost my pen. This is fine. Okay. thank you.
Basically, anything you say or do can be held against you.
So at the last meeting.
I'm gonna tell Meany that.
The last meeting, we asked Mark Nichols about the issue of, is it possible, is it legal to consider having the prosecutor be a nonpartisan position? And so Mark has put together this memorandum. Frankly, I haven't had time to read it. I don't know if the rest of you. So why don't we just take 1 minute before you start, Mark, and let us just review this, and then we'll have you present it. Thank you. Huh? Well, Mark, did everybody get one? Selinda doesn't seem to have one from that Ted Miller sent us from MRSC. So it's really just Mark's memo. Are we ready to proceed with Mark's presentation? Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you, commission members. And so what I thought I'd do is just talk through what I hope will be a clear, concise explanation of why I believe that we cannot, through our county home rule charter, convert the office of county prosecutor from partisan to nonpartisan. And I'll note at the outset, this has been a fun issue to research. Frankly, it's one of just a few occasions over the last decade in which I found myself disagreeing with the conclusion reached by MRSC, which is staffed with great research attorneys. They specialize in municipal law, and so they're one of my go-to resources, frankly. So it really piqued my attention when I discovered that they originally opined through the document that you have that they thought a home rule charter county could, through its charter, convert the office designation. And so here's why I believe that that conclusion has been reached in error. I would note that the prosecuting attorney is a partisan office in each of Washington's 39 counties, Clallam included, and it has been, to my knowledge, for the history of our state. Election of the office, that is the office of county prosecutor, follows those procedures set forth in law that govern the election of partisan officers. And so just know that within the revised Code of Washington, Title 29A, there are some provisions that address partisan office, and there are others that address nonpartisan office. The procedures between the two are different. And so to give you a tangible example of a difference, I can direct your attention to RCW 29A.52.112, which addresses partisan office. And if you look at the second subsection of that statute, it states in relevant part that whenever candidates for a partisan office are to be elected, the general election must be preceded by a primary conducted under this chapter. You can compare that statute to RCW 29A.52.220, which addresses nonpartisan office. And subsection 1 of that RCW states in relevant part that no primary may be held for any single position in any nonpartisan office if, after the last day allowed for candidates to withdraw, there are no more than 2 candidates filed for the position. Stated somewhat differently, when you're dealing with a partisan elected office and you have one person who's declared to run, under state law, under 29A.52.112, there's required to be a primary election as a condition preceding to the general. That does not hold true when you're dealing with a nonpartisan office, however. And so, where any county in Washington state, it doesn't matter, frankly, if it's a code county or a charter county, to attempt to convert the office from partisan to nonpartisan, it would wind up invariably affecting the way that the office is filled through election. And that is specifically what's prohibited by the Washington State Constitution and the very language that is cited to within MRSC's memorandum. And so for that reason, I do not believe that you can, through a county home rule charter, convert the office from partisan to nonpartisan, and that's based upon a constitutional prohibition. I would note for the benefit of the commission that in researching this issue, I took the liberty of reaching out through email to the other 38 elected county prosecutors. And of those who responded, they either agreed with the conclusion, and I would note that these are elected prosecutors who are both of the Democratic and Republican persuasion. They either agreed with the conclusion that you cannot convert the position from partisan to nonpartisan, or, interestingly, someone came back and were very adamant that there are strong reasons for which it should remain partisan. I know that there were inquiries made in other counties, including King County back in 2007, to see if they could convert the position from partisan to nonpartisan. That was an unsuccessful effort that fell by the way. To this day, King County, like all others, treats the Office of County Prosecutor as being partisan. And so in conclusion, I would refer everyone to the memo. If there's a desire to continue further exploring this issue, there's a footnote that I've included that speaks to the process through which an Attorney General opinion can be requested. I would note that that act occurs by and through likely the county prosecuting attorney, but not necessarily the Charter Review Commission. I think if the commission were to send a request to the Attorney General, they'd probably say, you're not one of our statutory clients, we have no duty or obligation to advise you. But if I were to ask the question, my hope would be that they would take it up. Although, as indicated in the footnote to my memo, the AG's office, through an opinion issued in January of 2014 under current Attorney General Bob Ferguson, has already opined that the Office of County Prosecutor is partisan. So I think they'd be hard pressed to, for purposes of one formal opinion, make the statement that the office is partisan, and then for purposes of another, reach the opposite conclusion. Ultimately, I think people just want to have a prosecutor who follows the law, and so the desire to look at this issue is coming from a great place, and I think that it's well-founded. I have no interest in having partisan politics play a role in any of my decisions, and so I'm adamant that I'm not going to allow that to happen. But I'll entertain any questions today, answer what I can, and I hope that's been helpful.
Okay, questions. Ken, you want to ask a question? And Ted, or before we start, Heather, want to ask a question? Okay, Ken, you first.
Well, first, with all due respect, suggesting that because no other counties in the state have a nonpartisan prosecutor as a legitimate reason, I would argue we have the only elected DCD director in the nation, and we support that, so just for the record. Mark, it seems to me that on several of the points that has allowed you to draw the conclusion of the answer of no are based on quotations from the RCWs that could be easily interpreted the other way. And again, maybe there's a good reason for the position to be partisan. That's clearly the, according to you anyway, that's clearly the opinion of most attorneys and prosecutors in the state. But the issue of primaries, it seems to me, the section, the RCWs you cite, those apply to all positions. If you only have 2 people declared, you don't have a primary in all the other positions. So I don't really see the relevance there, to be honest. And also, as far as affecting how the office is filled by election, I mean, it only affects it relative to the current partisan process. If it became nonpartisan, then, I mean, therein lies the change, it seems to me. And again, I don't particularly care one way or the other, but it just seems like if this is a question that people have, I mean, getting an answer from the highest authority in the state would make sense. So the question is, would you be willing to make a request to the Attorney General to offer a formal opinion if the commission decided that that's what you want to do, that majority? Because you have that authority, you could say yes or no.
Yes, and as indicated in the footnote to the memo, I'm glad to entertain that, but I would, as a first course, I would need to see at least 8 of the commission members joining the request for me to look at doing just that. I would note too that, and just by way of partial response to your comment, that the state constitution is completely silent with respect to the position of DCD director. It's not silent with respect to the position of county prosecuting attorney. The state constitution contains specific language addressing county prosecuting attorneys, also addressing judges of the Superior Court, for example. And so to compare the two under the state constitution doesn't make great sense in my mind. The other point is that, I would ask the folks not shoot the messenger. I'm here to give you my best legal opinion, and frankly, I was very curious to see if I could find a way to navigate the law and reach the conclusion that a charter county could do this. But the more that I looked at the issue and the more that I looked at that language and that phrase, which creates a prohibition against affecting how the office is filled, the more problems I ran up against in trying to reach the conclusion that we could get to yes. And so I don't disagree that having some guidance would be helpful. But again, the Attorney General's office seemingly has put itself in an interesting position, although I'd be fascinated to hear what they'd say. One of the things I'll note is that sometimes the turnaround time on an Attorney General opinion can take 6 months or more. So even if we were to request it, there's no assurance that they'd be able to turn their opinion around timely for purposes of the work of this commission.
Ted?
Yeah, two questions. The first one is a clarification on your footnote 1. Was this opinion on a home rule county, home rule charter county, or a non-home rule charter county?
I think that opinion was in relation to a non-home rule charter county. That involved Grays Harbor County.
Okay, so this might not be a precedent for a home rule charter county, then?
Perhaps not.
Okay. And my other comment is simply that perhaps on behalf of myself or the whole commission, I almost feel like I need to apologize to you in the sense that there's at least an apparent conflict of interest between you as a county prosecutor and you as a legal advisor to us, advising us on what to do about a county prosecuting position. and it's our fault we put you in that position. And for that reason, I really think the appropriate thing to do would be to go ahead and nail this down, even if our county charter cannot consider it because it comes in too late. It'll solve the problem for future county charters, both for ours and the other 6 counties. Once and for all, the issue will be put to bed. And so at the appropriate time, I will move that we petition the Attorney General and get an opinion from them through you.
I second that motion.
And life's too short for apologies, so there's no conflict here. You've asked for my opinion, my thoughts. I'm not the decision maker here, you are. And so I just thought this would help the discussion, and I'm not sure if it's frankly clarified it or confused it, but my hope was that it would affect the former and not the latter.
Any other comments? Nolan?
I guess what I would say is that I've always been taught that you obey the law as long as the law's on the books. If the law is wrong, you need to change it, but until it's changed, you live by it. So I kind of agree with him. I'd like to pursue that we really believe that should be corrected. It's probably going to have to require a change in the RCW.
And I would note that I think there is a way to effect the change that's been suggested by some, and that involves an amendment to the Washington State Constitution, frankly. That's where the prohibition is coming into play. This is the Constitution, I believe, drawing a line in the sand saying we can't do that. And so I'm keenly sensitive to the requirements of the state constitution, and that's where I believe the true impediment to this is.
Any other questions for Mark? Thank you. And
Sure.
then we'll, so Ted, it sounds like you have a motion you want to make?
Yeah. I would like to move that the Charter Review Commission request that our county prosecuting attorney submit the question, the same question he's posed in his memorandum, to the Attorney General for a definitive Attorney General opinion.
Okay. Moved by Ted, is there a second?
I second.
Noah seconded. Okay, it's open for discussion. So the matter under discussion is whether or not we request the prosecuting attorney to forward to the AG's office the question he has outlined in his memo. Can the prosecutor's office in a charter county be nonpartisan? Right.
And so my question is on the maker of the motion. There are 2 forms of an AG's opinion. One is an informal, and that's, for lack of a better word, not peer-reviewed within the office. And the other one is a formal AG's opinion, and that's a peer-reviewed document that can take anywhere from, I'm going to be nice and say 3 months. I've seen one, I think, with that, to 6 or 8 months. And so what is the intent of the maker of the motion?
Before I answer that, may I ask the prosecuting attorney what he would advise?
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to comment. So given the interest in the issue, and I think it's probably interest that extends outside the boundaries of Clallam County. Other counties have tinkered with this issue, looked at it different ways over the course of time. If we're going to go the distance, and if you're going to ask me to entertain making a request to the AG's office, although it's going to take more time, I think it would be more helpful, frankly, to have a formal opinion generated.
And I concur, and that's how my motion should be.
I would also just simply request that the motion be phrased in a way that allows me discretion to make the decision as the elected prosecutor to submit the request. Instead of directing the prosecutor to make it, have the motion be one that requests the prosecuting attorney exercise their discretion to submit the request to the AG's office.
Well, the problem with that is that you just have the right to refuse to do so, right?
Yes, and technically that right exists anyways. That's frankly why I'd like to have the motion be worded that way, so it's more reflective of what's actually going to wind up happening.
Okay, I agree.
So, for the record, could you state your currently amended motion, please?
I move that the Charter Review Commission ask the county prosecuting attorney to forward an opinion similar to his written opinion to the Attorney General for a formal opinion.
I still think that amended motion. Okay. So you've all heard the motion. We need any discussion?
Well, I'd like to comment. I would like to think that enforcement of the rule of law should be above party politics, as important as party politics are to our way of life. And I believe that. But I would like to think, at least symbolically, we could say that party politics are not a part of how our laws are enforced. And so for that reason alone, and again, the current system has more or less worked for a long time, I guess. But for that reason alone, I guess I would ask that the commissioners vote in favor of the motion so that we at least have a chance to find out what the highest attorney in this state believes is the law, and regardless of the outcome. So I'm in favor.
Len?
Yeah, I'll vote against this motion because I think it's already taking a turn.
Microphone, please.
I'm going to vote against this motion because I think it's already taken an inordinate amount of time away from more important endeavors of this commission.
Any other comments before we go ahead and vote? Rod?
Well, I'll vote for it just to get the answer from the Attorney General's office. However, I would predict that Mark's answer is correct. And I would say those of you might want to look back in the 1920s when we had partisan judges. And as I recall, that required both a constitutional and a legislative series of amendments. So I have a suspicion that Mr. Nichols will be correct and Paul at MRSC will not be. But that's my prediction.
So are you ready to have had sufficient discussion? You ready to vote on the motion? Okay, and you've all heard the motion. So those in favor? Why don't you raise your hand and I can tell. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10. And opposed? So. Okay. We got that? Okay, thank you. We'll look forward to the 6 months down the pipe. Hearing what the AG's office has said. I think it will be an interesting piece of information to share with other clients.
Yes, and so what I'll do, just so the commission has the benefit of this knowledge, is between now and the time of the next meeting, I'm going to come up with the actual question so that everybody can see it to make sure that it's addressing the issue. I think I've got a very strong sense of how that needs to be worded, and I'll also have made a decision by that time. So you'll have something coming back for you from me before it goes, say, to Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, appreciate it.
So, Mark, you may want to stand up there because the amended agenda agenda included a concern by Nola, and it regards the Charter Review Commission PowerPoint that you presented to us December the 23rd. And in that, I'm trying to find what page is it on Nola that? Oh, no, not there. Oh, okay. No, that's not it. Trying to find the page that you're talking about. Oh, here. Where's the page you're talking about?
The one I'm looking at was dated June 18th and 14th, so the one that you're talking, it's the third to the last page.
Oh, okay. So I had a conversation with Nola during the break, and her concern is that in your PowerPoint presentation, it says, holders are subject to the doctrine of incompatible offices. The doctrine of incompatible offices is the common law limitation on the right of a person to hold more than one public office at the same time. So I think the one question is that I don't think we're freeholders for Charter Review Commission versus you. So one of the questions is, do you see a difference between those two? And the second one is her concern in our discussion, tell me if I'm right, Noah, was that if this is true, then we are at this table in trouble because there are several people here that hold other elected positions, such as PCOs and treasurers and city councils. So there's some confusion around that. And I'm wondering if it might be just appropriate for you to kind of clarify that next meeting. And Nola said she was comfortable with that. Is that something you would be comfortable with?
If,
clarifying that discussion there, the doctrine of incompatible offices.
If a majority of the commission would like me to do that, I'm glad to. I can provide a degree of clarification quickly this evening, and then I can take maybe a few other issues under advisement and come back with some further information, either at the next meeting or the one following, just depending upon how involved the inquiry is.
Okay. Noah, since it's your concern, you have a motion you'd like to make?
I move that we give Mark the latitude to give us what he would like to do tonight, but to come back either the next meeting or the following with what he's more comfortable with.
No, but you have to name the subject in your motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Regarding incompatible offices and a person holding more than one public office at the same time.
So is there a second to Nola's motion? Glenn, is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, so Glenn seconded, now it's open for discussion. Rod?
So I would hope that if Mark comes back with this discussion, he'll find the case of Senator Nemi versus King County, where the right honorable senator was also a judge, and some tried to say that she couldn't hold those positions. Since I knew the senator fairly well at the time, I followed the case pretty closely.
Microphone, please.
Just a suggestion.
Ron, you had your hand like this and the microphone was.
I would suggest a few. You need to look at a case called, I think it's Senator Janice Nemi versus King County, I believe. And it involved her holding a position in the state senate and also a position as a judge. There may also be some case or some decision about a Representative Theringer. That might be relevant.
So, that question before us is whether or not this body is interested in having a discussion, asking Mark to do further research around the doctrine of incompatible offices, which is presented in his PowerPoint. Any further discussion? Ed?
No, I just think that before you vote on that, we should hear what he has to say tonight, because it might put it to bed so we can just not have to address it.
But the motion is whether or not the commission wants to discuss the issue.
Oh, I thought the motion was to have him come back next week
Okay.
with an answer.
Yeah, my motion was to allow him to present information, if not, then to bring it back next week or the following week, whatever he was comfortable with in response to this. But I think he said he would need direction from the commission.
Okay, I thought the intent was to figure out this commission wanted to have a discussion on this issue. Ken?
I guess I'm not clear whether the question is about some of those of us on this commission who currently hold 2 offices, or whether this is about understanding that and having something in the charter regarding it. So which is it?
So what's, got me? I'm looking to all of you, so what do you want to do? Selinda?
I want to note that we did have some public comments on the issue, and so I do want to be responsive to that, so I will be supportive of the motion to discuss this issue. I think it needs to be clarified so people don't have thought that we ignored their concern.
So if I am allowed to interpret the motion, it would allow, if you vote in the affirmative, allows Mark to give us a little information tonight, and if he decides we need more, he'll bring back more later. If you vote no, it means you don't want to discuss this issue. Is that okay? Is that appropriate interpretation?
Very good interpretation.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Go ahead, Glenn was next. Yes.
I just think it could be an outgrowth of what we discussed as to whether we're going to amend the charter to clarify it.
Ken?
well, evidently I missed the meeting where this was brought up by public comment, so I guess if what Glenn just said is what is the response that Selinda has had to this issue. I mean, that's all I want to know, why we're talking about it. Because I don't remember it coming out previously, so. And that's my fault. I took my wife to dinner on her birthday last week.
All right. So has there been adequate discussion? Are you ready to vote on the motion?
I just had one comment when we had our discussion. I think that was the point that we brought out, is that it's a matter of principle moving forward. I don't think it's affecting our commission. We are at what we are.
I can't hear when there's a secondary conversation. Thank you. Go ahead, Noah.
To me, it's a matter of clarifying the principle of it. I think that we stay as a commission the way we are now. We're not going to sink our ship over this issue, but I think it needs to be resolved for future reference so that if there is an incompatibility, we don't continue it in the future.
Or that we make a charter change to it.
Right.
Okay. Ron?
Well, I heard you say earlier that you think we might be out of compliance, and did that cast a shadow on everything that we do?
I will leave that in Mark's camp.
I understand that. That was what I thought you were talking about.
And that's the thing that I think would be useful to this discussion, is because even if this doesn't necessarily impact this commission, the part that would impact me is if there's going to be talk about the elected officials' pay and the salary commission, and I would like to actually have those issues clarified, so as we move forward, I can make sure that we stay within. So there's the pay issue, and since there is a county elected official on the charter, I would like to have this issue explored.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote those in favor of the motion. Aye. And opposed? So be it. Thank you. So Mark, you said you want to share a few comments tonight?
Yes, I can touch on a couple of points that may set some folks' mind at ease and then clarify a few other points at the same time. So in the PowerPoint that I prepared, which it sounds like a number of you have, that was something I prepared in advance. It was an educational presentation intended for people who are thinking about running for charter review, so they could be armed with information in advance and make a decision about whether they wanted to run for charter review, recognizing that there were different rules or laws that would apply to them and govern their conduct. And so the doctrine of incompatible offices is one that's not often discussed. I'm going to note at the outset that my PowerPoint is a little sloppy in the use of the phrase freeholder, because there is a technical distinction in that the initial group of freeholders responsible for framing the charter are separate and distinct from a terminology perspective and frankly in application as compared to you as charter review members. That doesn't affect the ultimate outcome, however. And so The doctrine of incompatible offices, and this would go to your question, Nola, fundamentally, it asks the question of whether when you're dealing with one person who holds two elected offices simultaneously, if the discharge of their duties in one office is repugnant, and that's the term used in law, to the discharge of their duties in another, that speaks to the possible existence of a problem under this doctrine. This is a very case-specific, fact-specific inquiry. Just because one person holds two elected offices doesn't automatically mean there's a problem. So that's the first thing I wanted to make clear. An example of repugnancy that would trigger a problem under the doctrine of incompatible offices might involve the scenario where you had, for example, an elected county commissioner who was simultaneously the elected county treasurer, and while wearing their commissioner hat, they could make a budgetary decision as one of three commissioners at the end of the year to direct an inordinate amount of money to their own budget, thereby benefiting themselves, sitting in a separate capacity. And so you can see the problem with that. The way I would describe it to non-attorneys is that it doesn't really pass the smell test. So that's what the doctrine is designed to address, is whether, again, discharge of duties sitting in one elected capacity is repugnant as to the discharge of duties simultaneously sitting in another. If there's a question about this, for particular elected charter review commissioners who also hold separate elected office, and Selinda, I'm going to use you as an example because the treasurer is a statutory client of the county prosecutor, as you well know. You know, I have the ability to provide you with legal advice on that, wearing your hat as county treasurer. It doesn't necessarily need to flow through the commission as a whole. For those folks who sit in other elected capacities, you may have representation available through your public sector organizations who could help guide you through the analysis as well. But again, this is very issue-specific, very fact-specific, and I want to make clear that there is not automatically a problem if one person holds two elected offices.
Thank you.
And I'd be glad to do some additional work, again, if there's a desire by a majority of the commission for you to do so.
Okay, then one more thing, then we need to move on, because remember our bylaws say we can only meet for 3 hours, and we still have some major things on our agenda.
When I was running for this office and we went through the election process, the gal there says that the only exceptions to that rule were the PCO and the Clallam County Business Commission. I didn't challenge, I don't know why there would be that difference, but it just is confusing to me.
And I can't speak for what other people have said.
No.
I need to know more about the genesis of the statement and hear a bit more explanation as to those two offices to be able to
I
comment.
just don't know why that differentiated.
So before I move on, I just want to, you don't even need a motion, but just show of hands, do you believe that we have had sufficient input on this discussion, or do you want Mark to do any more work? So those who think the discussion has been complete, you just raise your hand. And though, well, I mean, enough that, okay, the second, let me see what we've got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. So I asked that question, then those give you a chance to vote, and you would like Mark to do more homework and come back and continue this discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I guess you don't have to do more homework.
All right.
Thank you.
As much as we want to fill your calendar.
I will note, for those of you who have interest, MRSC has one of the links on their page addresses the doctrine of incompatible offices. So those of you who have a question, you can look at that and we'll give you some more information.
Thank you, Mark.
So,
If you want to look at some current dialogue, I believe Senator Benson is also the DCD director in Clark County. Senator Sheldon is a county commissioner in Mason County, so it's not unheard of, and it is very fact specific to see if there is like a financial conflict. So in that case, and we'll
So next on our agenda is the subcommittee. Did you all get, I did this, I forgot to put on the top the date. This is the updated commission matrix preference. Did you get one? Okay, does everyone have one? Okay. So what you will find is that so everyone is very prompt about sending in their updated. And so what we see is that Article 13 will not need a committee because Ron is the only one who's interested in that. So Ron would be able to bring his proposed language directly to the commission. Article 12 has 4 people that have signed up, and that is Sue Ford, Glenn Wiggins, Connie Bouvet, and Mike Doherty. So that would be a subcommittee on Article 12. You can all figure out when and where you want to get together. I'm going to move down to the ones that have small enough numbers to deal with. Article 10 has Ron Bell and Barbara Christensen, and so that would be a subcommittee. Article 9, Ron Bell, Steve Burke, and Barbara Christensen, so those 4 people would be the subcommittee for 9. Article 7 is Bell, Miller, Fleck, and Corson, so that would be a subcommittee. Article 5 is Turner, Burke, Barkhuis, and Christensen, so that's a committee. And Article 1 is Judd, Ford, Miller, Roth, Beauvais, and Fleck, so that meets the lines. Now, the ones we're left with then is Article 2 has 8 persons, Article 4 has 10, Article 6 has 10, and Article 7 has, 8, has 7. So basically, I skipped that one. That meets the cutoff, so that one actually can be a committee. And that would be Ron Bell, Sue Ford, Miller, Roth, Burke, and Bouvet, and Doherty.
And me.
I'm sorry, Ken. Didn't I read you off?
Are you doing 8?
Which one are you doing?
I'm doing, 8. I missed that one when I originally went through. There's 7 people that have signed up for 8, which is Hayes, Ford, Miller, Roth, Burke, Bouvet, and Doherty. So that is a committee. So the ones that we are left with that have too many people to have an easy decision making is Article 11 has 10, Article 4 has 10, and Article 2 has 8. I sort of looked at the charter, I personally, this is up for discussion now, how we're going to deal with these larger committees. Article 2, it's a little unrealistic to say go by sections because they intersect. And one, so one idea may be that those who have the committees, Articles 2, 4, 6, and 11 that have over a quorum, one possibility is that you would split and have, for example, Article 4 would have Committee A and Committee B. So you would have 2 separate committees on Article 4, but they would not intersect. They would not meet together. You just have 5 people on Committee A and 5 committee on B, and it might be interesting to see what 2 committees that are dealing with the same article come up with. So it is one possible way of allowing everyone to serve on the issues that they're interested in. So, up for discussion. Yes, Connie?
On Article 2, I will pull my name so that there will just be 7. Then you don't have to worry about it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to delete you. So that makes it 7. So Article 2 now has Sue Ford, Maggie Roth, Steve Burke, Selinda Barkhouse, Glenn Wiggins, Barbara Christensen, and Rod Fleck. Okay, so now we're left with 3 committees that have 10 on each article. Suggestions on how to deal with that? Selinda?
Would there be a way for perhaps for the next meeting you to sort out that the same people sort of are in the same group A for various issues, so when we meet, we can discuss, rather than keep running around between different variations? I mean, so there's people that, so if you're gonna split us up into 2 committees, that, or maybe you just do it right down the middle there or something, they can match the people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think we just do random. Or just go along the line. Okay, Ken, you're next, then Nolan, then Ted.
Well, I just have a question. I mean, what you've suggested was the first thing that popped into my head. And the fact that we have so many people interested, I think having 2 committees is almost justified by having a broad representation of ideas on it. But my question is, if, one thing I worry about is wasting a lot of time when we reconvene, talking about all the same things that each committee A and B cover. So my question is, could each of those have, committees, the 2 committees for 1 article, could they submit their thoughts? I guess they're going to be submitting recommendations for revisions. Could they submit those to Trish or to the executive committee to be sorted and compiled into one list? Legally, could we do that?
Well, if you look at our guidelines for last time, all reports have to come in writing. From all subcommittee reports have to be in writing. They could be majority and minority reports. So in answer to your question is that Committee A would submit their report in writing, Committee B would submit their committee report, and then you would get those 2 and you could figure out whether you have a duplication or whatever. And then that would be...
So as chair, you could just make it clear that there's duplication here, so we're not going to have one discussion on a proposal.
I would not make that. I would let all of you make that decision
that's fine.
when you compare the reports. You'll have them in writing. Let's see, Nola, you were next.
When I was doing my homework, I noticed that on Article 4, there seemed to be a logical break between 4.10 and 0.20 being the power and duties, and then 4.25 being the DCD. And I'm wondering if that might not be a better way to divide it, if that was where the interest of the players was. That would be the crux. And then on Article 6, I found the same thing to be 610 was administrative, 620 was the duties. So there was kind of a logical break there on those. It was a little more challenging when I got to 11, but I think it's still doable. That might be another option rather than having us duplicate effort.
Okay.
Well, I was going to come up with another alternative, although I think Nola's idea is pretty good too. And that is, do it instead of on a random basis, do it by logistics. Let the people who are east of Port Angeles be on one and the west of Port Angeles on the other, so there's a lot less travel.
Oh, okay, geographically. Okay. Rod, I saw your hand.
Well, and I was going to, 1, withdraw from Article 6. I figure I can hold my own in a debate on a report. So, but on Article 2, what you might want to consider is whether folks want to have a committee of the number of commissioners and whether or not there should be an elected exec. That seems to be the 2, I'll say, perennials.
Well, 2 already meets the qualification of 7 or less because Connie told her name.
I'm just saying if you even wanted to divide that up, even if folks wanted to parcel that a little smaller.
I would leave that to the committee. They could make that decision.
And on Article 4, I would suggest maybe the DCD, the coroner, and the sheriff have been talked about as the 3 other positions. And then on Article 11, the charter itself, the commission, maybe the discussion points seem to be on the frequency of its meetings and how to replace vacancies. You could divide that into that. There are some topics that have come up that don't fit.
Right.
So I think that's why I'd like to withdraw, but I heard one member say they would like to have a discussion about natural resource lands. And I'm like, well, I'd love to sit in that discussion.
Okay. So what I'm looking, so first of all, is there 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 are already established. Is that?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So I am happy to entertain a motion. If you'd like, we can do that by article or by just a sense of what you want to do with Article 4, 6, and 11, because there's 10 people.
I move that we divide it into geographical area, east and west, so we divide committees by geography. So, because I'd like to discuss, that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Selinda, seconded by Ted, that Articles 4, 6, and 11 each have 10 individuals that are interested, that they be, the intent of your motion was to split it into 2 committees, okay.
Geographical.
That those will be split and meet geographically to reduce mileage and time. So, discussion.
Would they both have the same review of the entire article?
Yes.
Yes.
Whatever they, yeah, whatever they.
Connie?
I would rather see it done by section. I think, because I don't care to talk about Director of Department of Community Development. I like it the way it is, but I'm concerned about one of the other sections in there.
Well, remember that if you're on a committee, you are allowed to have majority and minority report, so if you don't like it. I mean, there are options. One of the difficulties when you divide by section is that in the charter, under articles, the sections at many levels intersect with each other, so it's kind of difficult
In
sometimes
some
to split
cases,
them out,
yes.
but you can do that if you decide you want to. So the motion we have on the floor is that we have Articles 4, 6, and 11 be split into 2 committees per article, and with the split coming on a geographic basis to reduce mileage.
Okay, where's that geographic boundary going to be for simplicity? Where?
I think, Glenn, I assume it'll just depend with each article. We'll just look at how, and depend, because there's different people on each one of them, and we sort of like Squim versus, and the east end of Port Angeles, and perhaps Port Angeles and
You just take Race,
West, or-
if you took Race Street, divide, use that, or you get to the answer quicker.
well, except that, if you did that, you might find out
Yeah.
that 9 of them live east of Race Street, and then you're in trouble. So we'll have to divide them up based on who is signed up and their geographic location. Other discussion on the motion? You ready to vote? Okay, those in favor of the motion that we split Article 4, 6, and 11 into committees A and B based on geographical location, say, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I guess that does it. Okay, so now comes that split. So you have 4 from District 1. And so that's 3, 4, 5. So it could, Article 4 could go down through Turner, and then the other half would be Barkhuis, Wiggins, the Bay, and Horson. I think that would do it. Okay.
If we need a motion, I move that we do that.
Okay. Article 6. Fortunately, this sheet is done by district, so it makes it pretty easy. So we end up actually with the same committee members doing Article 6 for the top half. The bottom would be Roth, Burke, Barkhouse, Wiggins. Okay? Flint. Flint withdrew on that committee. Article 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. So it would go, the top 5 would be down through Rock, and then we'd have Barkhouse, Wadens, Bouvet, and Leck. Does that sound that that meets the needs of the motion we just voted for?
Yeah, I move that the CRC adopt that.
Second, and move that we adopt the concept committees A and B as just recently delineated. Moved by Miller and seconded by Bouvet. Any discussion?
I just have a question. How
Yes.
will the committees be called?
That will be up to each committee to figure that out. You can communicate with each other because you're not a quorum, so you're a subcommittee. So you can actually call each other or send an email and suggest that you meet at someone's house for tea or go to the espresso stand, or you can meet whenever. But I would say this, I encourage you to start meeting sooner rather than later, remembering that May the 4th is the absolute final date to get your report in. So you've noticed that if you look at the schedule that we've set up for ourselves, that at the very next meeting that we're going to be discussing proposed charter changes, so that hopefully there might be something from the subcommittee by then. If not, Ron, I would hope that on April the 6th that you'd be able to present whatever it is you have in Article 12, since that's an individual.
Article 13.
Huh? I'm sorry, 13, correct. So if you could kind of work on having something in writing for April 6th. It also is a time when there's been some discussion about what about issues that we've heard and they don't fit in any of these articles. Okay. April 6th is a good time to start bringing the language, and I would ask to have a rational discussion that anytime you want to bring a proposal, be sure it's in writing and that it's distributed to the entire commission, so we will be dealing with a written document which we can fuss around with, add, subtract from, whatever we want to do. But the conversation is so much richer when you have a written document in front of you rather than a concept.
Should it be sent in advance of the meeting?
That would be good. I mean, the more advanced time you have. So it would go to Trish and she would distribute it.
And it would come out with our agenda.
Yes, or it would come out earlier. Yes, sir.
It's related, I guess, to this motion and to what Kim was saying, is I think we want to have Mark, I think what you're saying is that we can't communicate and not honor the public records. It doesn't have anything to do with quorum, it has to do with communication. And as soon as there's a communication, whether it's in a quorum setting or not, that's a public record. And so I'm struggling with how we figure out how we stand these up, because we can't talk back and forth to each other on the email.
You can.
Well, I'd like to hear from Mark.
Because Mark gave us that ruling on that the subcommittees are not subject to the Open Public Meetings Act.
But this is not the Open Public Meeting Act, this is a public record. So I want to find out from him if we're having a problem with that or not.
So if this will help, simply maintain the records that you develop as you go about discussing charter review matters. And I would just ask or recommend that folks bundle those. Maybe you can develop some folders, give your records, your writings to Trish. She can assemble them, compile them as part of the record. And so that way everything will be captured. And if somebody wants to request to inspect a copy or actually make a copy of one of those documents, they can certainly do that. But OPMA, again, is going to focus on whether a quorum of you is meeting, or if it's not a quorum, a smaller group, how you're behaving. If you behave in a way that's consistent with the action of the commission as a whole, you're going to be bound by the requirements of the OPMA. Otherwise, with respect to your written records, again, I just recommend you bundle them and make sure that through the process you give them to Trish, the clerk, and we can have them available to requesters if they'd like to see them.
For the record, time to behave. Okay, no, and then we're gonna move quickly because we want to make sure we have time for public comment and meet our 3 hours.
Okay, my concern is that we all were instructed last month to do our homework, and all of this public testimony, we need to have assigned whichever article they belong to, make sure all of that input gets to those committees so that we don't just ignore what the public has said.
Each of you are on several subcommittees, and it's the individual commissioner's responsibility to bring the information that they have heard and incorporate into your discussion. We all have the same information. Okay. So, any other questions about subcommittees before we move on to the public comment phase? Oh, you guys were fast and efficient. Thank you. Public comment. Anyone from the audience wants to make a public comment? Be sure when you come up to the podium to sign your name and put your address down. Oh, yeah, okay. Excuse me, before, they just corrected me, Stephanie. Before we get to public comment, there was a motion as including the A and B cutoff. So, those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you for keeping me honest. Okay.
Stephanie Over, Port Angeles. Ed and I both offered to, for the purpose of transparency to the citizens of the county, any of your committee meetings, if you would like us to take them, because we're getting great response from the public to what's going up on the and in the newspaper. If you would like us to be there to take the meetings, we will do it. We will post it just like we're doing everything else.
Public comment is just that. Thank you. Hey, everybody knows how to get hold of you.
Trish can give out the information.
Thank you.
Did you write your name down on that?
Yeah.
I'll phone her to that.
It's not unofficial.
Bob Ford, two things. I'd like to clarify something. Mr. Miller said earlier when the DCD director was speaking. Did I understand you correctly to say that this commission has the power to formulate and regulate conditions or qualifications for a particular place? Did I understand?
Well, for the DCD director, yes.
So you think that this commission has the power to
Okay, excuse me, I just want to step in. The public comment, Bob, what we appreciate is just if you can give us your ideas, and if you have specific questions, I encourage you to propose them to the entire
I want to
commission.
clarify this because I think it's incorrect.
Okay, so,
And I would defer to what was recorded. My understanding of this commission is you don't have any power to do anything except put something on the ballot for the people to vote on. Yes or no? Is that correct or incorrect?
that's correct.
Therefore, the statement that this commission has the power to regulate or formulate regulation is inaccurate. Is that a fair statement?
It's misleading. Obviously, I meant to put it on the
Oh,
ballot.
I don't know what you meant. I don't want to go by what you said. And,
The end result, if it's on the ballot, is yes, we did have that power. If it goes to the ballot and gets voted on.
the voter has the power. This commission doesn't have it.
Correct.
I just want to make that clear.
We propose the voter.
But that I encourage you not to have this discussion. The public comment, clarify, the public comment period, the public gets up and tells us or asks us questions, and unfortunately, they're only limited to 3 minutes, and we really are impeding their time if we get into some dialogue, so we'd like to hear from you.
In previous meetings, you have said it's good to have a community conversation.
Right.
I thought that was available. The other thing I'd like to comment on is the idea of elected people being under a certain regulatory standard. And I think that if you look at the history of this country, that was never part of our history. and that the average person could in fact be elected to the presidency of the United States. So to argue for a formulation of qualifications for any elected office, I think is defeating the purpose of a free people and a free society. I'm done with that. The second thing I'd like to say is the grand jury or Star Chamber, if you research the grand jury or the Star Chamber, you'll find it simply puts another step in between what the prosecutor does currently. The prosecutor here in this county is also the coroner. So before you do a grand jury, maybe you ought to think about getting a coroner. So anyway, I'm done. Thanks.
Just to clarify, when we had our committee discussion, it's because it was a hearing, and that was the only thing on the agenda, was hearing and sharing ideas. Tonight, we're trying to stay within our time frame, so, and still have time for public comment. John?
Ed Bowen, P.O. Box 101, thanks again, and I appreciate this public comment on general issues. Few process issues here. I'm glad I got clarified that my 4 submittals for your web system has made it in. Very untimely. I still have no response that 2 of them have been received, and boy, I'm at a loss on how that website's going to work. It still does not allow any attachments to be submitted, and it's very vague for someone like me to be able to get something to you through that system. Next is actually a public, I've reverted now to a public records request process with you now, because I don't know what the heck it is you guys have in front of you. I've talked to your staff, and it doesn't look like everything that you're dealing with is actually winding up in our hands. It's identified to me you have an executive committee report. I'd like to see that. Apparently the prosecuting attorney provides you products. I'd like to see that. What I see sitting as a member in the audience is a white piece of paper, because you're holding everything up to your face reading it. I don't know what it is you're looking at. So I would like everything made available through the website or something of what you have, your packets, what you're dealing with. And if not, then I'll make a public record request. And do I need to make that to the chair? Because I've attempted to do that with your staff, and it doesn't seem very efficient. Moving on, it was stated the other night by the county sheriff of his points, but I listened during the public hearing process, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Wright out in Forks that brought up a sheriff's issue. It seemed like you guys would have posed that query of his to the sheriff when he was sitting before you the other night, but that didn't happen. So there's kind of a weak link in this presentation thing. It doesn't seem like a lot of public testimony came into this process of here. Moving on, the one thing I do want to point out for the record tonight, I have submitted to you, and you have received it apparently, my complaint about this commission's operating under the Special Meetings Act or Special Meetings Rule. I truthfully believe you have violated your bylaws. I can claim that in at least 2 meetings, and questionably in 2 additional meetings where you have violated your bylaws, and that is the chapter or the segment 3 of the bylaws, section 7, that states you will have 2 public comment periods. And it was stated at the last meeting that only applied to your regular meetings. That is an incorrect statement. Read your bylaws. It is clear in there you will have 2 public comments at all of your meetings. Or I won't say the word all, but it doesn't have anything to do with distinguishing special and regular. And last but not least, what I would like tonight, in a different reflection, I'd like to support, add some documentation as Commissioner Wiggins here has put, give him some examples of why I believe the general. Can I finish?
Yes.
And I'm going to submit, because it's a very large document, and I'll give this to her, to Trish, and she can distribute it to you. A Department of Natural Resource quarterly report to the county commissioners recently. Very educational. I would ask you to take this and use it in my query to you about amending the charter in regards to county resources. And in 3 areas, I would give you an example. It talks about in here how the normal trend revenue-wise has been somewhere between $5 to $6 million per year, and all of a sudden it jumped to $8 million this year. That's and they could not explain the reality of that $8 million. That's not a good number. And so even DNR is having some issues with that. And the last piece I'd like to bring up is in regards to this has to do with that they talk about how they can't manage their thinning process, and that product comes out of their thinning, their force, which you're going to do a lot of in 2016. And the question was posed, why aren't you supporting the fuels energy program here?
So if you can wrap it up for us,
Okay.
please.
So I'll submit this as supporting documentation, and I'll leave it at that.
And for the record, anybody who has submitted anything, it does go to Trish. Please do not send it to me, because Trish is our official record.
Okay. Are you answering my question then about your
The answer to anybody in the audience who wants to send something to Charter Review Commission, you send it to Trish. She's the keeper of the records. So we're doing well. We're within. We need to adjourn in a couple minutes, but I want to ask. So, does the commissioner, do you have anything you want on the agenda specifically next time? It is proposed that we will be, it's April 6th, here in Port Angeles, and we will be discussing proposed charter changes. Is there anything specifically that anybody wants to see on the agenda? No.
I think that the 4 groups that we're going to have to split off should give us a definition of how they're organized and when they're meeting.
Well, each subcommittee will be setting up their own agenda.
But those that are having to divide it, I think that's a separate issue that needs to be brought to our attention.
Why?
They're only dividing into A and B, so that Article 11A, we'll be discussing Article 11. It's no different than when Article 1 meets, they just discuss Article 1. Okay? Any other questions? I encourage you all to hang around for a few minutes after we adjourn and find somebody who's going to be on a subcommittee with you and begin to set up some timeframes to meet. Trish?
Good of the order, I distributed a proposed press release for
Oh, thank you.
publication. If legal counsel had a brief look at it, so it appeared to meet the criteria.
Remember last meeting, we appointed Dawn to fill the vacancy, and according to charter, we as a commission need to notify the public as to what we've done. The PDN did a nice job of doing the whole article and putting it in a box. This will be the official press release, which has been approved by Mark. And you have a copy. It just says, Clallam County Charter Review Commission announces the appointment of Don Corson, 16 March 2015, Port Angeles, Washington. The Charter Review Commission voted unanimously at their March 11 meeting to appoint Don Corson to a vacant position due to a resignation. Mr. Corson was sworn in on the March 16th to serve as the 5th District Commissioner. So that will be sent out tomorrow, right? And we don't need to really vote on that. That's just a matter of. Hearing nothing else, and we stand adjourned.